The academy announcement ended. The students did not move. Not immediately. The morning breeze drifted across the awakening plaza, carrying the scent of polished white stone and flowering trees from the academy gardens. Thousands of first-year students stood beneath the towering crystal pillars, each wearing expressions somewhere between excitement and fear. Parents filled the outer viewing terraces, while instructors walked calmly through the crowd, making final preparations. The silence lasted only a few seconds. Then the entire plaza erupted into noise. Students compared talents, parents celebrated. Some cried, others stared blankly at their status panels, struggling to accept the futures that had just been assigned to them. Far above, observation drones floated quietly beneath the transparent barrier dome, transmitting every moment to the academy archives. Xiao Fan remained exactly where he was. His guardian night class had already become yesterday's discussion. His heart resonance talent had become today's mystery. Neither helped him understand what came next. The pink gold panel had disappeared after showing Lin Xiaoyu's bond progress. Nothing else had appeared. No congratulatory message. No tutorial. No explanation. Just silence. Xiao Fan frowned. I dislike systems that assume users already know how to use them. Beside him, Zhang Hale laughed loudly enough for several nearby students to turn around. I told you. Your system has personality. My system has poor documentation. There you go again. It should have included a user manual. Chen Lei adjusted the strap of his shield case. If it did, you would spend 3 days reading it before training. Correct. Zhang Hao threw both hands into the air. See? Even he admits it. Lin Xiaoyu covered her mouth as she laughed. The sound immediately eased the lingering tension surrounding the group. For a brief moment, they were simply 15-year-olds standing together after one of the biggest days of their lives. Then a new announcement echoed throughout the academy. All newly awakened students, please proceed to your assigned class registration areas. Placement results are now available. Above the Awakening Plaza, dozens of enormous holographic ranking boards illuminated simultaneously. Blue light spread across the entire academy. Thousands of names began scrolling upward. The plaza exploded into another wave of voices. There, my name, what rank? I made elite class. I missed it. Students rushed toward the nearest boards. Parents pointed excitedly from the viewing terraces. Instructors merely watched. For them, this happened every year. For the students, this moment would shape the next several years of their lives. Zhang Hao grabbed Xiao Fan by the sleeve. Come on. The 3 boys hurried toward the nearest ranking pillar, while Lin Xiaoyu followed close behind. Dozens of students had already gathered around it. The rankings were divided by combat evaluation, talent potential, awakening compatibility, physical assessment, and projected development. At the very top, one name glowed with brilliant electric blue light. Rank 1, Zhao Kai. Class, Thunder Warrior. Talent, SS rank Thunder Vein. Recommended placement, Elite Class 1. Even among the sea of names, Zhao Kai's entry seemed to dominate the board. Students whispered automatically. As expected. No surprise. That's the future top hunter. They say several guilds already contacted his family. Xiao Fan quietly continued reading. Second, third, fourth. Dozens of names. Eventually Zhang Hao found his own. Huh. He nearly punched the air. Elite Class 3. Chen Lei nodded after finding his own name. Same. Great. Zhang Hao immediately wrapped an arm around Chen Lei's shoulders. We're classmates. Chen Lei looked mildly resigned. I noticed. Luo Yun's voice came from behind them. Elite Class 2. Everyone turned. Luo Yun stood calmly with his usual unreadable expression. Lin Xiaoyu smiled. So we're together. Luo Yun nodded once. It seems so. Zhang Hao looked around. Brother Fan. Xiao Fan was still scanning the board. His name was not among the elite placements. That surprised nobody. His combat performance had been average. His class was defensive. His talent remained unexplained. Eventually, he found it. Xiao Fan, Guardian Knight, Talent, SS Rank Heart, Resonance. Placement Standard Class 7. Recommended Development Path, Observation Pending. He blinked. Observation Pending. That line had not existed for anyone else nearby. Interesting. Very interesting. Before he could think further, Chang Hao leaned over his shoulder. Standard 7? He scratched his head. That's, weird. Chen Lai looked more carefully. They separated your talent from your placement, so they did. Lin Xiaoyu frowned. Xiao Fan looked at her. Is it? You awakened an SS rank talent. An unexplained SSS rank talent. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. She knew he was right. No academy could responsibly place someone into an elite combat class when nobody understood what their talent actually did. Still, it bothered her. Xiao Fan noticed. You don't need to look disappointed? I'm not disappointed. You look disappointed. I'm disappointed for you. His expression softened. Thank you. Her cheeks warmed slightly. It isn't right. No, he smiled faintly. But it isn't right. Is understandable. The conversation paused as another wave of students surged toward the boards. One boy celebrated after reaching Elite Class 2. Another quietly wiped tears from his eyes after seeing his standard placement. Two parents hugged their daughter so tightly she almost disappeared between them. The academy was full of beginnings. Some joyful, some painful, most uncertain. Xiao Fan watched silently. This was what rankings really meant, not numbers. Expectations. Behind him a calm voice suddenly spoke. You accepted it quickly. The group turned. Li Zhenqian stood with both hands behind his back. His sharp eyes swept across the students before settling on Xiao Fan. I expected complaints. Xiao Fan shook his head. The academy has more information than I do. Li Zhenqian raised an eyebrow. You believe that? I hope so. A corner of the instructor's mouth twitched upward. Barely. Good answer. He looked toward the ranking board again. Placement isn't destiny, I know. Many students never surpass their initial ranking, and some do. Li Zhenqian nodded. Exactly. His gaze lingered on Xiao Fan for another second. There is a reason your placement includes observation pending. Xiao Fan immediately looked up. What reason? You'll find out. The instructor turned and walked away before another question could be asked. Chang Hao stared after him. I hate adults who answer questions with more questions. Chen Lai folded his arms. They call that teaching. I call it emotional damage. Lin Xiaoyu looked toward Xiao Fan. What do you think he meant? Xiao Fan watched Li Zhenqian disappear into the crowd. I don't know. That was true. But he had noticed something. Li Zhenqian hadn't looked surprised. He had looked expectant, as though waiting for something, or someone. The thought settled quietly in Xiao Fan's mind. Nearby, academy staff began guiding students toward different registration buildings. Elite classes moved east. Standard classes headed west. The two groups naturally began separating. Chang Hao rubbed the back of his neck. So, Chen Lei adjusted his equipment bag. I suppose this is where we split. For now. Lin Xiaoyu looked between Xiao Fan and the Western Academy buildings. I'll come visit. You'll be busy. So we'll be busy. I'll still visit. Xiao Fan smiled. I know. Neither of them noticed the faint pink-gold shimmer reflected for just an instant inside Xiao Fan's eyes. The system did not produce a notification. It did not interrupt. It simply watched. Somewhere beyond the Awakening Plaza, inside the upper observation tower, overlooking the entire academy, several instructors reviewed the placement data in silence. Most screens displayed ordinary statistics. Combat aptitude, mana compatibility. Mana compatibility. Physical assessment. Talent rarity. One screen remained different. Only a single student profile occupied it. Name: Xiao Fan. Talent: SS rank Heart Resonance. Evaluation status: restricted. One of the instructors frowned. He still hasn't shown any obvious combat ability. Another folded his arms. Not yet. A third quietly closed the report. Keep observing. No one noticed the final line hidden beneath multiple layers of Academy. Authorization. External observation request approved. The file disappeared before anyone else in the room could read it. Far beyond the Academy walls, someone else had already begun paying attention. The Eastern Academy District stood in sharp contrast to the Western campus. Towering silver-white buildings reflected the morning sun, their polished walls lined with flowing blue runes. Private training arenas shimmered behind transparent mana barriers. Artificial waterfalls poured through carefully sculpted gardens, while students wearing elite uniforms walked confidently between the buildings. The Western District was simpler. Older stone buildings stretched beneath rows of ancient maple trees. Training fields occupied most of the open space, their ground marked by years of combat drills. Equipment racks, shield stands, wooden practice dummies and endurance courses filled the courtyards. Nothing looked luxurious. Everything looked useful. Xiao Fan stopped walking for a moment. He looked east, then west. Zhang Hao noticed immediately. Thinking about switching sides already? Xiao Fan shook his head. No, you don't sound convincing. I'm comparing maintenance budgets. Zhang Hao burst into laughter. You looked at the elite district and started it. Calculating construction costs? It seems expensive. Chen Lei glanced toward the elite towers. It probably is. Luo Yun looked once before continuing toward the western campus. The western district has fewer decorative structures. Xiao Fan nodded. Lower maintenance costs. Lin Xiaoyu sighed softly. I feel like the four of you notice strange things. We notice practical things. Xiao Fan corrected. She smiled. Exactly. Their paths finally reached the point where the Academy Road divided. Elegant silver signs floated above each route. Elite District. Standard District. Students naturally began separating. For the first time since Awakening Day, Xiao Fan and Lin Xiaoyu would no longer attend the same classes. Neither of them spoke immediately. The noise around them gradually faded beneath an awkward silence. Zhang Hao looked between the two, then quietly dragged Chen Lai backward. We suddenly have something important to discuss. Chen Lai frowned. We do now. Luo Yun followed without comment. He understood immediately. Within seconds, the three boys had created a respectful distance. Lin Xiaoyu looked down briefly before lifting her eyes again. I guess this is it. For class. Neither sounded satisfied with the answer. Xiao Fan adjusted the strap of his equipment bag. You'll probably be much busier than I am. I'll still find time. I know. You always say that, because I believe you. She blinked. That answer arrived so naturally that it caught even Xiao Fan himself slightly off guard. Her lips curved into a warm smile. You've changed. Have I? A little? In what way? You trust people a little more. Xiao Fan thought carefully before answering. I suppose my recent experiments support that conclusion. She immediately covered her face. There it is. What? You almost sounded normal. I am normal. You are not. I disagree. You carry a notebook to research emotions. It has produced measurable results. She laughed again. The sound felt strangely familiar. Comfortable. A nearby academy bell echoed across the campus. Registration would begin shortly. Lin Xiaoyu reluctantly took a small step backward. I really have to go. So do I. Another brief silence followed. Then she reached into her academy bag. I almost forgot. She handed him a neatly folded cloth packet. What is this? I made too much this morning. Xiao Fan opened it carefully. Inside were several homemade rice balls wrapped in fresh leaves. "They're for lunch. You already packed my lunch." "I packed extra. Specifically extra, maybe." He looked at the food, then back at her. "I appreciate it. You don't have to analyze everything." "I'm not. You were about to." "I was." She shook her head with an amused smile. "I knew it." Behind them, Zhang Hao whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. Affection +2. Lin Xiaoyu froze. Xiao Fan slowly turned. Zhang Hao immediately looked toward the sky. "I wasn't talking. You were. The wind. There is no wind. The emotional wind." Chen Lei rubbed his forehead. "I regret standing near him." Luo Yun quietly added, "Understandable." Even Xiao Fan smiled. Small moments like this felt surprisingly light. As if nothing dangerous existed beyond the academy walls. As if 15-year-olds only needed to worry about classes and homework. The illusion lasted less than 30 seconds. A convoy of black armored transport vehicles rolled through the academy gates. Conversation throughout the campus stopped almost instantly. Students stepped aside. Parents lowered their voices. Even instructors watched silently. Each vehicle carried the emblem of the Azure Hunter Administration. The insignia represented people who protected the city beyond the walls. Real hunters, not students. The convoy stopped near the administration building. Several uniformed officers stepped out first. Then another man exited the central vehicle. He wore no armor, only a long black coat over simple dark clothing. His hair was touched with gray despite appearing no older than 40. His presence alone caused nearby instructors to straighten instinctively. Zhang Hao swallowed. "That guy." Chen Lei narrowed his eyes. "He's strong." Luo Yun corrected him quietly. "Not just strong. Dangerous." The man never looked toward the students. He walked directly toward the academy administration building with calm, measured steps. Li Zentian emerged from inside to greet him personally. 2 senior instructors followed behind. None of them smiled. Xiao Fan watched carefully. The atmosphere around the academy had changed. Not dramatically, subtly, like the arrival of someone whose importance everyone already understood. Lin Xiaoyu spoke quietly. "I've never seen Principal Han come outside to welcome someone." "Neither have I," Chen Lei admitted. Zhang Hao whispered dramatically. "Maybe he's an SS rank hunter," Luo Yun answered. "Or someone higher in authority." The black-coated man disappeared into the administration building. The heavy doors closed behind him. Normal conversation slowly returned across campus. Parents resumed talking. Students began moving toward registration again. Yet Xiao Fan noticed something unusual. Li Zentian looked toward the first-year students only once before entering the building. His gaze lingered for barely a second. On Xiao Fan. Then it was gone. Xiao Fan frowned. Coincidence? Perhaps. But after seeing observation pending on his placement, after hearing about an external observation request, coincidences were becoming less convincing. He quietly memorized the stranger's face, not because he recognized him, because he suspected one day he would need to. Brother Fan. Zhang Hao waved a hand in front of him. "You've entered research mode again." "I have." "What now?" "There are 2 possibilities." "Oh no. The timing of that visitor is either unrelated to us, or related to someone among the new students." Zhang Hao looked around dramatically. "I hope it's me." Chen Lei answered without hesitation. "It isn't. You're destroying dreams today." Xiao Fan looked once more toward the administration building. He could not explain why. But the feeling that someone had quietly entered his story refused to disappear. Far above the academy, hidden behind reflective barrier glass, the black-coated man stood beside a panoramic window overlooking the entire campus. Principal Han placed a folder on the table. "The first-year data is complete." The man did not answer immediately. His eyes calmly scanned the crowds below. Thousands of students, hundreds of instructors, dozens of awakening talents. Eventually, his gaze settled on a single boy walking toward the Western District with 3 friends laughing around him. Xiao Fan. The man spoke his first words since arriving. So, that child is heart resonance. Principal Han's expression remained unreadable. Yes, the black-coated man's fingers rested lightly against the window. His voice remained calm. Interesting. Nothing more. Nothing less. Yet somehow, the single word made the room feel colder. Outside, Xiao Fan laughed at another ridiculous comment from Zhang Hao, completely unaware that somewhere above him, someone had already begun evaluating whether his existence might one day change far more than Azure Third Academy. Registration queues stretched across the Western Academy courtyard like orderly rivers. Hundreds of first-year students waited beneath towering maple trees, whose crimson leaves drifted gently through the autumn air. Instructors sat behind long rune-etched desks, verifying identities while blue holographic lists floated above each registration station. Compared to the Eastern District, everything here felt quieter, less glamorous, more practical. Xiao Fan looked around with interest. Large shield racks stood beside the training fields. Rows of weighted armor hung neatly against stone walls. Students carrying shields, spears, axes, and heavy weapons occupied most of the lines. Few flashy elemental effects appeared here. Most awakened classes relied on discipline before power. I like this place. Zhang Hao stared at him. You actually do? Xiao Fan nodded. The decoration budget is significantly lower. There it is again. What? The budget. Chen Lai looked around as well. The equipment is older, but maintained. Luo Yun ran a finger lightly across a nearby weapon rack. Someone oils these every day. An elderly groundskeeper happened to pass behind them carrying maintenance tools. Without slowing his steps, he answered calmly. Every morning, the 4 boys turned simultaneously. The old man smiled before continuing on his way. Xiao Fan watched him disappear. Dedicated maintenance staff. Zhang Hao sighed dramatically. You notice the janitor. He appears competent. You are impossible. Nearby. Nearby. Instructors began directing students into different registration groups. Guardian classes, healers, scouts, elemental combat, support classes. Students gradually separated according to their awakened classes. Xiao Fan joined the Guardian line. Only 18 students stood there. Much fewer than warriors or elemental users. Most carried uncertain expressions. A large guardian with broad shoulders scratched his head. I thought there'd be more of us, another student answered. Most people don't want to get hit for a living. Xiao Fan quietly nodded. Understandable. The broad-shouldered boy noticed him. You agree? Being hit sounds unpleasant. Then why did you become a guardian? I didn't. The boy blinked. Fair point. Several nearby students laughed. The atmosphere relaxed almost immediately. A loud voice echoed from another queue. Move faster. Everyone instinctively turned. A heavily built instructor marched across the courtyard carrying what looked less like a clipboard and more like a slab of reinforced steel. He stopped in front of the Guardian registration desk. His shadow alone seemed to silence the entire area. This year's Guardian students. His deep voice rolled across the courtyard. I am Instructor Wei Rong. His academy coat could barely hide the powerful physique beneath it. Scars crossed both forearms. One sleeve was stitched from newer fabric than the other. His face carried the calm confidence of someone who had survived many battles. Wei Rong slowly looked across every Guardian student. When monsters attack, he pointed toward the warrior queue. They look at them. He pointed toward the healer queue. They protect them. Finally, he pointed toward the Guardian students. They run toward the monsters. Silence filled the courtyard. No one becomes a Guardian because it's glamorous. No one becomes a Guardian because girls like shields. Zhang Hao immediately whispered from another line. Can confirm. Several students struggled not to laugh. Wei Rong's sharp eyes swept across the courtyard. Who said that? Zhang Hao instantly looked down at his shoes. Brave. Wei Rong continued without pursuing the matter. You stand between civilians and monsters. You stand between teammates and monsters. Death. You stand between hunters and failure. If you dislike responsibility, his gaze became noticeably colder. Leave now. Nobody moved. Not one student stepped out of line. Wei Rong nodded once. Good. His expression softened ever so slightly. The academy can teach technique. It can teach tactics. It can teach endurance. It cannot teach courage. His words settled heavily over the young guardians. Xiao Fan listened carefully. No unnecessary drama, no exaggerated promises. Just simple truths. He appreciated that. Registration resumed. One by one, students stepped forward. Identity verification. Talent confirmation. Equipment allocation. Training schedules. When Xiao Fan's turn arrived, the instructor behind the desk scanned his academy card. The blue screen flashed briefly, then unexpectedly turned gold. The instructor frowned. He checked it again. Gold remained. Another instructor quietly walked over. The first pointed at the display. Neither spoke. After several seconds, the second instructor nodded. Confirmed. The display returned to blue. The entire exchange lasted barely 10 seconds. Still, Xiao Fan noticed. Is there a problem? The instructor smiled politely. No. Then why did the screen change color? Routine verification. I see. He accepted his registration packet. He did not believe the explanation. Not completely. As he stepped aside, he quietly opened the packet. Inside were several items. Student identification badge, training handbook, guardian equipment voucher, campus map, training schedule, meal card, a folded notice. The first 5 looked ordinary. The final paper did not. Its envelope carried a small silver seal. Observation Division. His eyes narrowed. Before he could open it, Wei Rong's voice echoed again. Do not open sealed notices until instructed. Xiao Fan immediately looked up. The instructor hadn't even glanced in his direction. How had he known? Wei Rong continued addressing the entire class. Some of you received ordinary notices. Some received sealed notices. They are academy business. Nothing more. Several students immediately looked around, trying to see who had received one. Xiao Fan quietly slipped the envelope back into his packet. Interesting. Very interesting. Across the courtyard, Zhang Hao finally finished registration. He immediately ran over. Brother Fan. What class? Elite 3. I know. We have elemental training this afternoon. Congratulations. What about you? Xiao Fan showed him the packet. Standard 7. Zhang Hao nodded. Honestly, he scratched his head. I still think they underestimated you. Maybe. They have more data than I do. Zhang Hao groaned. Can you stop being reasonable for one conversation? No. I tried. Chen Lei arrived carrying a much heavier equipment crate. They gave me a new tower shield. Luo Yun held up a slim black scouting kit. I received field observation tools. Zhang Hao proudly displayed 2 practice swords. I got these. Xiao Fan looked inside his own equipment box. 1 basic academy shield, 1 wooden training sword, several weighted wristbands. Nothing unusual. Except, tucked beneath the shield lay another folded card. Plain white, no academy emblem, no signature. Only 1 sentence. Do not let anyone see the sealed envelope. Xiao Fan's heartbeat slowed. Not faster, slower. That was how his mind reacted whenever something unexpected appeared. He quietly slipped the card into his sleeve before anyone else noticed. Who placed it there? The registration instructor. Wei Rong? Someone else? No answer came. Only more questions. Far above the Western District, behind mirrored observation glass, The black-coated man stood beside Li Zentian. The registration records updated continuously across several floating screens. Most students showed ordinary status reports. Combat scores, mana affinity, talent rankings. One report continued receiving additional encrypted updates. Xiao Fan. The black-coated man spoke quietly. He noticed the color change. Li Zentian nodded. He notices almost everything. A faint smile appeared on the visitor's face. Good. It would be disappointing if heart resonance belonged to someone who couldn't. Li Zentian remained silent. The man looked once more toward the Western training grounds, where Xiao Fan laughed at another ridiculous complaint from Zhang Hao. Then he asked a question that caused even Li Zentian's expression to become serious. Has he opened the second file yet? Li Zentian answered immediately. No. Excellent. The black-coated man's eyes reflected the distant training fields. Let's select the distant training fields. Let's see whether curiosity reaches him before danger does. The sealed envelope rested quietly inside Xiao Fan's registration packet. It felt surprisingly light. Too light for something that had already attracted the attention of multiple instructors. Xiao Fan resisted the urge to take it out again. Curiosity was valuable. Timing was more valuable. Instructor Wai Rong gathered the newly registered Guardian students near the Western training grounds. The practice field stretched nearly 500 meters across, surrounded by thick stone walls scarred by countless impacts. Heavy wooden targets, reinforced steel pillars, and damaged monster mannequins occupied different sections of the field. Nothing here looked decorative. Everything had clearly been used. Wai Rong stood with his arms folded. Welcome to Guardian Class 7. No speeches, no introductions. We begin with one rule. He bent down, picked up an ordinary wooden shield resting against the weapon rack, and held it up. This. He tossed it toward the nearest student. The young man barely caught it before stumbling backward under its unexpected weight. Several students blinked. It weighs 30 kilograms. Wei Rong said calmly. Your monsters will weigh 30,000. The field became completely silent. The sooner you understand the difference, the longer you survive. Without another word, he walked toward the center of the field. Equipment. Now. The students hurried toward the weapon racks. Some struggled to lift their assigned shields. Others tested swords, hammers, and spears. Metal clanged across the training ground. Xiao Fan picked up his own academy shield. Simple, round, standard alloy construction. He lifted it once. Estimated weight, 9 kilograms. Balance acceptable. Grip placement slightly offset. Surface thickness inconsistent near the outer edge. Manufacturing efficiency prioritized over durability. He nodded to himself. Reasonable. Beside him, Zhang Hao wandered over from the adjacent combat field, carrying 2 practice swords over his shoulders. We've already started sparring. We've started lifting. Zhang Hao looked at the shield. Actually, that looks exhausting. It is. I'm suddenly grateful for swords. Chen Lai lifted his tower shield with both hands. Unlike the others, he barely strained. Wai Rong noticed immediately. You. Chen Lai looked up. Name. Chen Lai. Previous training? My father was a construction foreman. Wai Rong nodded once. I can tell. Chen Lai looked confused. My shoulders? No. Your posture. You've carried heavy things before. Chen Lai smiled faintly. Yes. Wai Rong pointed toward another equipment rack. Bigger shield. Several students stared. Chen Lai hesitated. The larger one? You'll outgrow that first shield within a month. Without arguing, Chen Lai walked over and lifted an even larger tower shield. This one nearly reached his shoulder. Several nearby students gasped. Zhang Hao whispered to Xiao Fan. I think he's secretly half bear. Possible. There are no bear bloodlines. There could be. There aren't. We lack sufficient data. Zhang Hao sighed. I walked into that one. Laughter spread among the nearby students. Even Wei Rong's expression relaxed slightly. Across the field, another instructor approached carrying several thick wooden poles. Balance training. The announcement immediately erased every smile. Each student received one pole. Then a shield. Hold both. 1 hour. A groan echoed through the training ground. One student cautiously raised a hand. Instructor, yes? Can we alternate arms? No. What if they become tired? They will. Another hand slowly rose. What if we drop them? Wei Rong answered without hesitation. You pick them up. Nobody asked another question. The training began. Within 10 minutes, shoulders started trembling. Within 20, wrists burned. Within 30, several students had already collapsed onto one knee before forcing themselves upright again. The wooden poles made balance surprisingly difficult. Even standing still became exhausting. Xiao Fan quietly adjusted his breathing. Weight distribution, center of gravity, muscle fatigue, joint pressure. He unconsciously began optimizing his posture every few minutes. Tiny adjustments, nothing dramatic. Simply reducing unnecessary strain. Wei Rong walked past him once, then again. The third time, he stopped. You've studied biomechanics. It wasn't a question. A little. Books, and observation. Wei Rong nodded. Keep doing that. Then he walked away. The conversation lasted only seconds. Yet Chen Lai noticed. So did I. He rarely compliments anyone. I don't think that was a compliment. It was. Zhang Hao called from across the fence separating the combat fields. Brother Fan? What? I think my instructor hates us. A loud crash echoed immediately afterward. Someone had been thrown onto the practice mat. Wei Rong glanced toward the neighboring field. That sounds normal. Zhang Hao's miserable voice floated back. It isn't. Several Guardian students laughed despite their aching arms. The atmosphere slowly transformed. Strangers became classmates. Complaints became shared jokes. Exhaustion became something everyone endured together. Near the edge of the field, Xiao Fan noticed another familiar figure. Lin Xiaoyu stood beyond the dividing path with several elite support students. Their instructor explained mana circulation while distributing crystal catalysts. She wasn't listening. Her eyes briefly searched the western training grounds. When they found Xiao Fan, she smiled. It lasted only a second, barely noticeable. Xiao Fan gave a small nod in return before returning his attention to balance training. Neither waved, neither crossed the training fields, yet somehow the simple exchange felt reassuring. A translucent notification flickered briefly across Xiao Fan's vision. Heart resonance, Lin Xiaoyu, affection 1213. The panel disappeared almost immediately. No sound, no explanation, no reward. Only a single number quietly increasing. Xiao Fan almost lost his balance. Not because of the shield, because the timing was impossible to ignore. One smile, plus one affection. Interesting. Very interesting. He resisted the urge to pull out his notebook. Now was not the time. Still, his mind had already begun recording another data point. Wei Rong's voice suddenly echoed across the field. Guardian 7. Everyone straightened. Training ends. Relieved sighs spread immediately. Then Wei Rong continued. Now, physical assessment. Several students groaned. I knew it. We haven't even recovered. This is cruel. Wei Rong ignored every complaint. He pointed toward the far end of the field. A massive, reinforced gate slowly opened. Heavy chains rattled against steel. The sound alone silenced every conversation. Something enormous stood hidden behind the gate. Only a dark silhouette was visible through the shadows. Several instructors quietly stepped closer. Additional barrier formations activated around the practice arena. Even Wei Rong's expression became noticeably more serious. He looked directly at his students. You wanted to become guardians. His voice carried across the silent field. Good. Today, you'll meet the reason guardians exist. The creature behind the gate took one slow step forward. The ground trembled. The creature stepped fully into the light. Several students instinctively took half a step backward. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, its body covered in dark gray scales that looked like overlapping stone plates. Thick forearms ended in blunt claws rather than sharp talons, and 2 curved horns rose from its broad head. Its yellow eyes swept slowly across the training field without malice, carrying the calm awareness of a beast that knew exactly how powerful it was. A heavy iron collar surrounded its neck. Blue restraint runes glowed softly across the metal. Wai-Rong rested one hand against the creature's shoulder. This is Stonehide. It is a captured iron-rank rock lizard. It has been trained. It will not kill you. A student near the back swallowed loudly. Probably. Wai-Rong looked at him. No, it definitely won't. The student relaxed. Wai-Rong continued. It can still break your bones. The student's face immediately turned pale again. Several classmates quietly laughed. Even Stonehide released a deep rumbling sound that almost resembled amusement. Xiao Fan observed carefully. Collar restraint. Mana suppression runes. Healed scars across both shoulders. Missing scale near the left forearm. Old combat injuries. The creature had survived countless battles before ending up inside the academy. Wai-Rong stepped away. Every guardian eventually faces monsters. The academy could teach you through lectures. It could show recordings. It could assign textbooks. He looked directly into their eyes. Fear cannot be learned from books. Silence spread across the field once more. You are not fighting Stonehide. You are meeting fear. The statement lingered in everyone's mind. Several instructors activated additional defensive barriers surrounding the arena. Transparent blue walls rose nearly 20 meters into the air. Students from neighboring classes gradually gathered outside the barriers. Even elite students paused their own lessons to watch. Zhang Hao squeezed between several spectators. Brother Fan, Chen Lai looked toward the barriers. This suddenly became popular. Luo Yun answered quietly. Everyone watches the Guardian introduction every year. Lin Xiaoyu also stood among the observers. Her expression remained calm. Her fingers did not. They quietly tightened around the crystal catalyst she had been issued earlier. Xiao Fan noticed. He gave her a reassuring nod. She returned one almost immediately. Wai-Rong pointed towards Stonehide. One at a time. You will approach. You will stand 5 meters away. You will maintain eye contact for 30 seconds. Then you return. A puzzled student raised his hand. That's all? That's all. That's all. Student looked relieved. Wai-Rong's expression remained unreadable. Begin. The first student approached confidently. After 3 steps, Stonehide slowly turned its head. Its massive body remained completely still. Only its eyes shifted. The student's confident smile disappeared instantly. His breathing became uneven. By the time he reached 5 meters, his knees visibly trembled. 30 seconds suddenly felt incredibly long. When Wai-Rong dismissed him, the young man returned, looking exhausted despite never fighting. Another student tried. She managed slightly better. A third stopped walking entirely after making eye contact. I can't. Wai-Rong simply nodded. Next, no criticism, no ridicule. Only acceptance. One after another, Guardian students faced the same invisible pressure. Not everyone failed. Not everyone succeeded. Each reacted differently. Eventually, Xiao Fan. He stepped forward. His footsteps remained steady. 1, 2, 3. Stonehide watched him approach. 4, 5. He stopped exactly where instructed. The creature lowered its enormous head slightly. Its yellow eyes met Xiao Fan's dark ones. For several seconds, nothing happened. Neither moved. Neither blinked. Xiao Fan quietly studied the monster. Breathing pattern, chest expansion, weight distribution, tail movement, ear position. Stonehide quietly studied him as well. Unexpectedly, the creature sniffed the air once, then tilted its head. Several instructors exchanged confused glances. Wei Rong narrowed his eyes. Stonehide had never reacted like that before. Xiao Fan remained perfectly still. Interesting. Its aggression level appeared extremely low. Its eyes tracked movement rather than staring aggressively. Its breathing slowed instead of quickening. This did not resemble a creature preparing to attack. It resembled curiosity. 30 seconds passed. Wei Rong finally spoke. Return. Xiao Fan nodded once before calmly walking back. No shaking, no panic, no visible fear. Several classmates stared. The broad-shouldered guardian from earlier scratched his head. Brother, weren't you scared? I was. You didn't look scared. My heart rate increased. That's it? Approximately 18%. The student blinked. You measured it. Estimated. Zhang Hao shouted from outside the barrier. He's weird. Chen Lei nodded. Very. Lu Yun added calmly. But useful. Laughter spread among the spectators. The atmosphere lightened considerably. Wei Rong remained silent. His attention stayed fixed on Stonehide. The old monster continued watching Xiao Fan even after he had returned to the line. Interesting. Very interesting. Wei Rong quietly walked over to the beast. He placed one hand against its neck. The old hunter had worked beside Stonehide for nearly 10 years. He understood its behavior. Today, something had changed. Stonehide gently released another low rumble. Not hostility. Recognition. Almost respect. Wei Rong frowned slightly. Impossible. This monster had fought veteran hunters. It did not acknowledge frightened first-year students. Not unless his thoughts stopped there. He glanced briefly toward the academy administration building. Behind the mirrored observation windows, the black-coated visitor still watched the training grounds. The man spoke without turning away from the glass. Stonehide likes him. Principal Han folded his arms. It has never reacted first. No, it hasn't. The visitor remained thoughtful. Animals notice things people overlook. Li Zenshin looked people overlook. Towards Xiao Fan. Do you think it sensed the heart resonance system? The black-coated man answered after a long silence. I don't know. And that is becoming increasingly interesting. Back on the training field. Wei Rong dismissed the class for a short water break. Students immediately gathered into small groups, discussing the monster with excited voices. Zhang Hao finally reached Xiao Fan. What did it feel like? Xiao Fan accepted a bottle of water before answering. Heavy. The pressure? No. The smell. Zhang Hao stared at him. You were thinking about the smell. It resembles wet stone after rain. Chen Lai burst out laughing. Luo Yun covered his face. Lin Xiaoyu arrived a moment later carrying an extra towel. Without saying anything, she handed it to Xiao Fan. You've been sweating. Thank you. He accepted it naturally. Neither realized how ordinary the exchange had become. Around them, everyone else did. Zhang Hao slowly looked toward Chen Lai. Chen Lai slowly looked toward Luo Yun. All three silently exchanged the same expression. Something had definitely changed. At that exact moment, a familiar translucent panel appeared before Xiao Fan's eyes. Heart resonance. Lin Xiaoyu. Affection. 1314. New condition recorded. He barely had time to read the final line before the notification disappeared. Only one sentence remained in his thoughts. New condition recorded. His grip unconsciously tightened around the towel. The system had just acknowledged something new. Xiao Fan kept walking until the others resumed their own conversations. Only then did he glance toward the empty corner of the training field. The translucent panel did not return. No additional explanation appeared. Only one sentence remained etched in his memory. New condition recorded. His curiosity immediately surged. Not enough to lose composure. Enough to begin forming hypotheses. He quietly repeated the sequence inside his head. Lin Xiaoyu noticed he was sweating. She handed him a towel. He accepted it. Affection increased. Then, the system recorded a new condition. Correlation did not equal causation, but it deserved investigation. He reached into his pocket. Then stopped. Notebook. No. Too many people. He would record everything later. Wei Rong clapped his hands once. Break is over. The scattered students immediately gathered again. Stonehide had already been escorted back behind the reinforced gate. The heavy chains rattled as the barriers sealed shut. Several students visibly relaxed. Wei Rong noticed. If seeing one restrained monster makes you feel safe, he pointed beyond the academy walls in the distance. You have much to learn. No one laughed. His tone carried no intimidation. Only experience. The next exercise. He pointed toward dozens of heavy packs stacked beside the equipment shed. Guardian Endurance March. Groans spread across the class. Each pack looked enormous. Several students instinctively began estimating the weight. Wei Rong answered before anyone asked. 20 kilograms. One student raised a trembling hand. Each? Obviously. Another hand rose. Can two people share one? No. A third hand appeared. What if someone has a weak back? Wei Rong answered. Calmly. Strengthen it. The discussion ended immediately. Students walked toward the equipment piles with expressions resembling condemned prisoners. Xiao Fan picked up his assigned pack. Slightly heavier than expected. Weight distribution uneven. He quietly loosened one shoulder strap before tightening the opposite side. The load settled closer to his center of gravity. Much better. Nearby, Chen Lai effortlessly lifted his own pack using one hand, then casually picked up someone else's. Wei Rong immediately noticed. Put it down. Chen Lai blinked. I was helping. I know. The academy also needs to know who cannot carry 20 kilograms. Chen Lai quietly returned the second pack. Understood. Zhang Hao leaned against the fence, separating the training fields. I wish we had backpacks. His instructor's voice echoed behind him. You do. Zhang Hao turned. Every combat student had also been issued one. His smile disappeared. Never mind. Laughter erupted from both training groups. Even Wei Rong allowed himself the faintest smile. The march began. Guardian students left the western training grounds in single file, following a winding stone path that circled nearly the entire academy. The route climbed gentle hills, crossed narrow bridges, passed training arenas, circled obstacle courses. Academy life unfolded around them. Elemental students practiced launching controlled fireballs toward floating targets. Healers learned mana stabilization beneath ancient trees. Scouts sprinted across elevated rooftops while instructors shouted timing corrections. Support classes experimented with enhancement spells that occasionally exploded in harmless flashes of colored light. The academy felt alive. Every corner contained students chasing different dreams. Xiao Fan quietly observed everything. Training methods, equipment quality, building layouts, emergency shelters, medical stations, supply storage. His attention drifted naturally toward logistics rather than spectacle. Halfway through the march, Zhang Hao appeared again, this time carrying 2 wooden practice swords while jogging awkwardly beside the Guardian route. You guys walk so slowly, we're carrying weight. I am too. 2 sticks. They're symbolic. Chen Lei looked at him. They're wood. Emotionally heavy. Luo Yun, who had quietly caught up from scout training, nodded thoughtfully. I'll allow it. Zhang Hao immediately looked proud. See? Chen Lai sighed. I've been outvoted. The 4 boys continued walking together for several minutes despite belonging to different training groups. An instructor eventually shouted across the courtyard, Combat class! Return to your assigned route. Zhang Hao saluted dramatically. I'll miss you. You'll see us during lunch. I'll still miss you. He jogged away. Weiron watched the interaction without interrupting. When Zhang Hao disappeared around the corner, he spoke quietly enough that only the guardians heard. "Keep friends outside your specialty." Several students looked surprised. Weiron continued walking. "When you become hunters, your team won't consist only of guardians." The lesson settled naturally into everyone's thoughts. Simple, practical, useful. Exactly like the man himself. As the march continued, Xiao Fan noticed something unusual near the northern edge of campus. A fenced training yard stood empty. Unlike every other facility, this one carried multiple warning barriers. No students entered. No instructors approached. Only several academy security officers stood nearby. The gate bore an unfamiliar silver emblem. Observation Division. Again, the same emblem from his sealed envelope. Interesting. Very interesting. He slowed almost imperceptibly. Not enough for anyone else to notice. Just enough to examine the area. The buildings beyond the fence appeared ordinary. Too ordinary. Plain concrete. Few windows. No identifying marks. A place deliberately designed not to attract attention. Weiron's voice suddenly came from beside him. Eyes forward. Xiao Fan obeyed immediately. Several seconds passed. Then Weiron spoke again. "Curiosity is useful. It also gets hunters killed." Xiao Fan looked ahead. Understood. Weiron glanced sideways only once. "You'll understand that place when the academy decides you're ready. Not if. When." The wording stayed with Xiao Fan long after they passed the restricted yard. Far above, inside the observation building itself, two people watched the Guardian march through reinforced glass. One was the black-coated visitor. The other wore the uniform of the Azure Hunter Administration's Observation Division. A woman in her early 30s with short silver hair quietly closed a digital report. His awareness exceeds expectations. The black-coated man nodded. He found the building. He almost counted the surveillance runes. He also noticed the surveillance runes. Secondary entrance. The woman looked mildly surprised. "I missed that. You were watching his face. I was watching his eyes." Silence returned. Below them, Xiao Fan disappeared behind another academy building as the march continued. The woman finally asked the question both had avoided all morning. "When do we tell him?" The black-coated man looked toward the sealed envelope recorded in Xiao Fan's student file. "Not yet. The child still believes he's simply attending school." The child still believes he's simply attending school. He deserves a few more days before reality becomes larger. The woman accepted the answer. Outside, the academy bell rang again. Morning classes officially began. For thousands of first-year students, it marked the beginning of academy life. For Xiao Fan, it marked the beginning of someone quietly preparing the next move around him. The academy bell echoed 3 times across Azure Third Academy. Morning training officially transitioned into classroom instruction. Guardian Class 7 returned to the Western District with noticeably slower steps than before. 20 kilograms had not seemed particularly intimidating when sitting on the equipment rack. After nearly an hour of marching, opinions had changed dramatically. Zhang Hao stood outside the classroom door waiting with crossed arms. "There you are." Xiao Fan adjusted the heavy pack on his shoulders. "We've been here the entire time. You look like you've aged 5 years. My shoulders certainly have." Chen Lai lowered his tower shield against the wall with a heavy metallic thud. "I could eat an entire cow." Luo Yun walked over from the scout building carrying several rolled maps. "I already checked. The cafeteria doesn't serve cows." Zhang Hao sighed. "There goes today's dream." Lin Xiaoyu arrived a few moments later with several girls from the support class. She spotted the exhausted Guardian students and couldn't help smiling. "You all look terrible." "We're thriving," Zhang Hao replied. "We've reached a higher state of suffering." One of the support students blinked. "Is that a training method?" Xiao Fan answered honestly. "Not intentionally." Several people laughed. The atmosphere remained surprisingly relaxed despite the demanding morning. An instructor stepped into the lecture hall. The room quieted almost immediately. Unlike Why Wrong, this instructor appeared almost scholarly. Thin glasses rested on his nose. His academy uniform was perfectly pressed. Several old scars crossed the back of one hand, hinting that he had once been a frontline hunter, despite his academic appearance. He placed several thick books onto the desk. My name is Instructor Chin Mo. I teach monster ecology. A few students visibly relaxed. Finally, a normal class. Chin Mo calmly looked around the room. Many new hunters believe strength determines survival. He picked up a piece of chalk and wrote a single sentence across the blackboard. Knowledge extends life. The strongest hunter in the cemetery knew how to swing a weapon. Silence filled the classroom. The hunter who returned home also knew when not to. Several students unconsciously straightened their backs. Chin Mo nodded with quiet satisfaction. Good. You are listening. He opened the first textbook. Question. What is the most dangerous Iron Rank monster near Azure City? Hands immediately rose. The Iron Fang Wolf. The Blood Ape. The Cave. The Cave. Ogre. The Venom Spider. Chin Mo shook his head after each answer. Finally his eyes settled on Xiao Fan. You. Xiao Fan stood. The answer depends on context. The classroom became quiet again. Chin Mo folded his arms. Continue. If the environment is an open plain, the Iron Fang Wolf Pack presents the highest threat because of coordinated hunting. If inside narrow caves, the Venom Spider controls movement and vision. If inside narrow controls movement and vision. Escorting civilians, the Blood Ape becomes more dangerous due to unpredictable aggression. If protecting fixed positions, the Cave Ogre's destructive capability increases dramatically. He paused. There is no universally most dangerous monster. There is only the wrong monster in the wrong situation. Several classmates slowly turned toward him. Chin Mo remained silent for several seconds. Then, a faint smile appeared. Excellent. The correct answer. The instructor looked around the room. Remember this. Context kills more hunters than statistics. He wrote another sentence beneath the first. Every battle begins before combat. Xiao Fan quietly sat back down. Zhang Hao leaned over immediately. I hate studying with you. Why? You make the rest of us look unprepared. I simply read. You read too much. Chen Lai nodded. That's true. Luo Yun calmly added. That's true, Luo. Objectively true. Chin Mo continued the lecture. Rather than memorizing monster names, students learned behavioral patterns, migration seasons, territorial instincts, preferred hunting hours, weaknesses, environmental adaptations. The class became far more engaging than anyone expected. Even Zhang Hao eventually stopped whispering. Halfway through the lesson, Chin Mo closed the textbook. Final question. Imagine your 4-person team enters an abandoned mining tunnel. You discover fresh monster tracks, no visual confirmation, no communication signal. What is your first priority? Students immediately began discussing possible answers. Prepare weapons. Advance carefully. Scout ahead. Retreat immediately. Xiao Fan quietly considered the scenario. Fresh tracks. No communication. Mining tunnel. Something felt wrong. He slowly raised his hand. Yes, the first priority is confirming why communication failed. Chin Mo's eyes sharpened. Explain. If monsters cause the disruption, they already know we're present. If natural interference caused it, that terrain itself becomes the greater threat. If another hunter caused it, there may already be human conflict. He looked toward the map hanging beside the board. The communication failure is the unknown variable. The unknown variable determines every decision afterward. Silence returned once again. Chin Mo slowly nodded. I've taught this scenario for 11 years. No first-year student has answered that way. Several classmates stared openly now, not with jealousy. With genuine surprise, Chin Mo quietly erased the board. Class dismissed. The academy bell rang almost perfectly with his final word. Students immediately began gathering their books. The morning had disappeared faster than anyone realized. Outside, the western courtyard buzzed with activity. First-year students poured into the walkways from every building. Support students discussed mana control. Combat classes argued over sparring results. Scout students compared navigation scores. The academy truly felt alive. Lin Xiaoyu found Xiao Fan near the courtyard fountain. "So, how was monster class? Educational?" "You met a real monster. I also met a textbook." She laughed. "I don't know why that sounds exactly like you." He looked toward the cafeteria, building where long lines had already begun forming. "Lunch?" "I was hoping you'd ask." Before either of them could take another step, Zhang Hao suddenly appeared between them carrying 3 meal vouchers. "Excellent. We're all eating together." Chen Lai arrived beside him. "So did you." Luo Yun joined last. "I assumed this would happen." Lin Xiaoyu sighed with amused resignation. "You planned this." Zhang Hao proudly nodded. "Group meals increase friendship." Chen Lai looked at him. "Or free side dishes." "Both." The 5 friends began walking toward the cafeteria beneath rows of golden maple trees. None of them noticed the elderly groundskeeper quietly sweeping fallen leaves nearby. He watched Xiao Fan disappear into the crowd. Then his weathered hand stopped moving. The old man's gentle expression vanished completely. His gaze shifted toward the observation building. Almost imperceptibly, he gave a single nod. Far above, hidden behind mirrored glass, the black-coated man returned the gesture. "The second observer has confirmed it." The silver-haired woman frowned. "He noticed us." "No. He noticed the boy." The visitor looked down at the busy cafeteria where thousands of ordinary students laughed, complained about homework, and rushed toward lunch. Somewhere among them walked a 15-year-old carrying a towel from a friend, a sealed envelope he couldn't yet open, and questions no ordinary academy could answer. The black-coated man's voice remained calm. "Begin phase 2. The silver-haired woman's expression became serious. "Already? He has started asking the right questions, and soon, the world will begin asking questions about him." The cafeteria was louder than any battlefields Xiao Fan had entered so far. At least, battlefields made sense. Enemies came from one direction. Obstacles could be measured. Terrain could be studied. But the academy cafeteria contained thousands of first-year students, dozens of meal stations, floating menu boards, shouting classmates, arguing elemental users, crying support students, proud elite students, exhausted standard students, and one Zhang Hao who had somehow obtained 5 trays. Xiao Fan looked at him. "Why?" Zhang Hao placed the trays down with great dignity. "Strategy." Chen Lai sat beside him. "Explain." "1 tray is normal lunch," he pointed. "1 tray is emergency lunch. Another point. 1 tray is for emotional lunch. Damage. Another. 1 tray is for unexpected hunger. Finally, he patted the last tray. "And this one is tribute." Lin Xiaoyu blinked. "Tribute to who?" Zhang Hao looked toward the western training fields with a haunted expression. "The 20-kilogram backpack." Luo Yun quietly picked up a steamed bun from the aisle. "Tribute tray. Accepted." "Hey, you said tribute. To suffering, not you." "I am suffering quietly." Xiao Fan sat down with his own meal. Compared to Zhang Hao's tower of questionable logistics, his tray was extremely simple. Rice, vegetables, steamed egg, soup, and the rice balls Lin Xiaoyu had packed for him. He had placed those carefully on the side. Lin Xiaoyu noticed. Her expression softened. "You kept them." "I said I appreciated them. You could have eaten them earlier." "I assigned them to lunch." Zhang Hao leaned across the table. "You assigned rice balls?" Xiao Fan nodded. "They were packed with lunch." "Intent." Chen Lai paused mid-bite. "That is somehow logical and strange." Lin Xiaoyu lowered her head slightly to hide a smile. Around them, academy life continued in full force. At the nearby elite tables, Students discussed guild rankings and advanced training rooms. At the standard tables, students compared instructors and complained about muscle pain. A group of healer students gathered near the window, practicing tiny stabilizing lights above their palms, while their instructors scolded them for using mana during lunch. A public news screen displayed silent footage of hunters returning from a dungeon gate near Azure City's southern wall. Civilians cheered behind security barriers as wounded hunters were escorted toward recovery vehicles. The world outside the academy did not pause for students. Monsters still moved. Dungeons still opened. Guilds still recruited. Families still waited. Xiao Fan watched the screen for several seconds. Then his gaze returned to his tray. The academy cafeteria meal quality was acceptable. Good rice texture. Soup temperature stable. Vegetables slightly overcooked. Meat portion insufficient for heavy physical training. He was about to record this mental note when Lin Xiaoyu placed half of her chicken cutlet onto his tray. You trained more today. Xiao Fan looked at the cutlet. Then at her. I have enough food. You always say that. Because it is true. Your definition of enough is suspicious. Zhang Hao gasped. She knows. Xiao Fan turned slowly. Knows what? That your food calculations are fake? They are not fake. You once said 3 bites of bread and a bottle of water could count as an emergency breakfast. Emergency breakfast. Different standards. Lin Xiaoyu pushed the chicken cutlet closer. Eat. Xiao Fan looked at her expression. There were several possible responses. 1. Refuse politely. Likely outcome. Argument. 2. Analyze nutritional distribution. Likely outcome. Lin Xiaoyu disappointment. 3. Accept. High efficiency. He picked up the cutlet. Thank you. Lin Xiaoyu's smile returned. Good. Zhang Hao clutched his chest dramatically. Growth. Chen Lai nodded. He accepted food without a lecture. Luo Yun added. Xiao Fan ate silently. The chicken tasted better than expected. A faint warmth moved through his chest. Not system warmth. Just human warmth. He decided not to analyze it. That decision lasted 6 seconds. Then he quietly wondered whether not analyzing something could itself be analyzed. Before that dangerous loop could continue, the academy cafeteria doors opened. The noise dipped, not by much, but enough to be noticeable. Tang Ruo entered with 2 senior students. Her deep navy and silver senior uniform caught the light elegantly. A slim tablet rested under one arm. Her long golden-brown hair moved softly as she walked, and wherever she passed, conversations bent around her like wind around a blade. Zhang Hao immediately straightened. Senior Tang. She looked over, then smiled. Squad 17. Zhang Hao almost saluted with a spoon. Chen Lei quietly lowered his hand. Tang Ruo approached their table. One of the senior students behind her looked curious. The other looked bored. Neither seemed interested in standard class first years. Tang Ruo clearly was. How was your first day of class? Painful, Zhang Hao said. Educational. Painfully educational. Chen Lai corrected. Luo Yun nodded. Accurate. Tang Ruo laughed softly. Her gaze moved to Xiao Fan's tray, then to the rice balls, then briefly to Lin Xiaoyu. Lin Xiaoyu met her gaze politely. The air between them remained friendly. Mostly. Tang Ruo's smile deepened. Homenade? Lin Xiaoyu answered calmly. I made extra. Zhang Hao whispered, specifically extra. Chen Lai stepped on his foot under the table. Zhang Hao's expression twisted, but he bravely remained silent. Tang Ruo looked amused. Good. Training burns more energy than most new students expect. She placed a small folded notice onto the table. Xiao Fan looked at it. What's this? Resource competition briefing. Chen Lai's eyebrows rose slightly. Already? Tang Ruo nodded. First week resource allocation begins tomorrow. The table went quiet. Resource allocation. The phrase immediately sharpened the atmosphere. Every academy student understood its meaning. Training time. Equipment access. simulation room slots, recovery pod privileges, mana chamber hours, extra instructor guidance. In Azura Third Academy, effort mattered. But resources decided how fast effort became results. Tang Rio tapped the notice. Elite classes receive baseline priority. Zhang Hao grimaced. Of course they do. Standard classes can challenge for additional access through competitions. Xiao Fan opened the notice. The information was clear. First-year resource competition. Objective: class-based performance evaluation. Rewards: additional training slots, equipment voucher upgrades, cafeteria nutrition allowance, instructor consultation hours. Zhang Hao's eyes instantly lit up. Cafeteria nutrition allowance? Chen Lai leaned forward. Equipment vouchers. Luo Yun looked at the small print. Scout facility access. Lin Xiaoyu glanced toward Xiao Fan. Guardian recovery room hours. hours. Fan continued reading. There were 3 categories: combat strength, practical survival, team adaptation. That last category immediately caught his attention. Tang Rio noticed. Interested? Team adaptation is less dependent on raw talent. Exactly. So, standard class 7 has a chance. Maybe. Her tone said more than the word itself. Maybe if they were smart. Maybe if they understood the rules. Maybe if they noticed what others ignored. Xiao Fan folded the notice carefully. Why tell us? Tang Ruo smiled. Because I dislike boring competitions, not because you want something. That too. Honest. Dangerous. Zhang Hao whispered. Senior Tang is terrifyingly cool. Tang Ruo looked at him. I heard that. He immediately sat straighter. Respectfully terrifying. Better. She turned back to a Xiao Fan. One more thing. Her voice lowered slightly. Elite Class 1 will participate. Zhao Kai. Nobody needed to say the name. The cafeteria noise seemed to fade around their table. Xiao Fan remembered the ranking board. The lightning. The gap. Then he remembered something else. The black-coated man. The sealed envelope. The silver emblem. Observation division. Resource competition was probably not only about resources. He was beginning to understand academy life. Nothing was ever only about the surface objective. Tang Ruo straightened. Briefing is after afternoon classes. Don't be late. She walked away before anyone could ask more. Zhang Hao watched her leave. Then slowly turned back to the table. Resource competition. Chen Lai looked at his equipment crate. We need resources. Lu Yun's eyes moved across the notice. We also need information. Lin Xiaoyu looked at Xiao Fan. What are you thinking? Xiao Fan looked down at the 3 categories again. Combat strength. Practical survival. Team adaptation. Then he placed the notice flat on the table. We cannot beat Elite Class 1 in combat strength. Zhang Hao groaned. Again with the painful honesty. We may perform acceptably in survival. Chen Lai nodded. And team adaptation. Xiao Fan's gaze sharpened. That is where rankings matter least. The 5 of them became quiet. Not because the challenge felt easy. Because for the first time the shape of a path had appeared. Narrow. Difficult. But real. Lin Xiaoyu's hand rested lightly beside the notice. Will help. Xiao Fan looked at her. This may affect your elite class standing. I know. Supporting a standard class strategy may create friction. I know. Then why? She looked at him as if The answer should have been obvious. Because you're my friend. The word landed gently. Friend. Still simple. Still safe. Still carrying more weight than before. For a moment, Xiao Fan did not know whether to feel grateful, guilty, or something else entirely. The pink gold panel did not appear. No affection increase. No bond progress. Nothing measurable. Yet somehow the silence felt more important because of that. He nodded. Then we'll need a plan. Zhang Hao grinned. Finally. Chen Lai folded his arms. One that doesn't involve me carrying everyone. Luo Yun said, impossible. You will carry Zhang Hao emotionally. Zhang Hao pointed at him. I am emotionally self-sufficient. Everyone looked at him. He paused. Mostly. Lin Xiaoyu laughed. The cafeteria table felt warm. Alive. Like a tiny island inside a world full of rankings, guilds, monsters, and hidden observers. Then the Academy public screen changed. A new announcement appeared across every cafeteria display. Students around the hall gradually stopped talking. The Silent Hunter news disappeared. In its place, a blue Academy notice filled the screens. First-year resource competition. Special evaluation category added. Unclassified talent application. Participation mandatory for selected students. Names began scrolling beneath the announcement. Only a few. Very few. Xiao Fan read them carefully. Zhao Kai, Gu Qingshui, Tang Ruo, and at the bottom, Xiao Fan. For a moment the entire cafeteria seemed to hold its breath. Chen Hao slowly lowered his spoon. Chen Lai's expression hardened. Luo Yun's eyes narrowed. Lin Xiaoyu looked at Xiao Fan immediately. Across the cafeteria, Tang Ruo stopped walking. On the far side of the hall, a group of elite students turned toward him. Xiao Fan stared at his own name on the screen. Unclassified talent application. Mandatory. The sealed envelope inside his bag suddenly felt heavier than before. Then, for the first time since morning, the pink gold panel appeared. Only one line. Observation interference increasing. The words vanished before he could blink. And high above the cafeteria, hidden behind mirrored glass, the black-coated man smiled faintly.